Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, and welcome back to The Stuff Your Accountant Isn't Telling You. Today, we are filming live at the AICPA Engage Conference. We are filming from the Earmark Studio, sponsored by Quick Feed. Now, today I have a great guest on. Her name is Katie Thomas. Now, if you don't know who Katie is, where have you been? Because Katie is like everywhere on LinkedIn, giving great content, helping people really get used to developing quality content on social media. So Katie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here. I'm super excited to talk about social media, content, and all the things today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, before we jump deep into the content and just all of those great things, tell me a little bit about Katie for those that don't know who Katie is.
So in a nutshell, I am a CPA. I got started, though, marketing way back in the day. I built my first website at 9. I grew up in a small business doing their marketing, doing Google Ads when I was 14. I loved marketing. And when I went to college, people are like, hey, if you like marketing, you like business, then accounting is really the language of business. So I thought, you know what? I'm good with numbers. I love math. Huge nerd. So I tried accounting, loved it. Found out you might as well get your CPA. And then when I was working in public, I was like, you know what, I just really miss marketing. So what if I combined my love for the accounting industry and marketing? And that's how I'm here today.
Awesome, awesome. Now, I'm curious. You said you built your first website at 9. So how did that even transpire? Because, I mean, when I was 9, I wasn't thinking about websites then. So how did that happen?
So I think it goes back to just being curious. And what we do during the winter in Kansas, it's cold, there can't go outside, clicking around on my computer. It was in database, and I actually built my website for my mom. She raised horses, like bred horses, sold horses, and so I made a website for her to sell horses, and she actually ended up publishing it, of course, with some editing and so forth, but yeah, it became a real live website.
Nice, nice. So I guess was your allowance based on like how many horses she sold through the site?
No, but it should have been. That would have been smart.
Awesome. Now, you know, one of the things that you usually don't hear about people who are a CPA is that they have an interest in marketing, because some CPAs say that, you know, the mindset of marketing, the mindset of being a CPA tend to clash. So for you, you went from your interest in marketing to being a CPA. So, like, how did you, I guess you would say, tone down the creativity long enough to grasp the rules and the structure of accounting?
I think I'm someone who does thrive on processes and always having, like, that goal that you're working towards. And I feel like accounting, it's like, I love the structure of always knowing that you can like take a process and get to a set answer. And like marketing, even though it's creative, you're still usually working towards a goal. It's just the constraints of how you get there are a little bit less structured than accounting.
You know, that's an interesting thing, because when a lot of people ask me about like creating content, and the first thing they go to is, well, I'm not a very creative person. And it's just like, well, there's a lot more structure to this than you would think. And oftentimes I wonder, like, how do people get in their mindset that marketing is all creative, there's no structure, you just, you know, I guess it's like making a Picasso painting. It's just like, it's all art form. And I'm just like, there is some structure. So why do you think people get confused about that?
Honestly, I think that that's often a roadblock that's covering up a bigger issue, and that's just fear of putting themselves out there and letting them actually like embrace who they truly are. Because a lot of content, it requires you to like have a voice and a perspective and to take a chance on your beliefs. And so if you just say, you know, I'm not creative, I can't do it, it just shuts your mind down and you're like, I'm not even going down that direction. Whereas if you had to actually say, what would this look like? It's like, hey, you're going to have to take a chance and put yourself out there.
I love it. I love it. So for those that are listening and for those that are watching, you see why I said she's great? Because, I mean, that's not an answer you typically hear where you go a little bit deeper than the surface level of like, hey, there's something that you're probably afraid of. And I want to talk a little bit more about some of those fears, because there's so many roadblocks people have about, you know, why they feel like they can't create content. So what are some of the common fears and roadblocks that you typically hear?
Yeah, so that first one is definitely just facing that fear. And fear, I don't know who coined this, but fear stands for false evidence appearing real. It's not actually real. And a lot of people are scared to do this thing that they haven't done. So you're like, okay, you know, why are you scared? Like, what proof do you have that you should be scared? And often it just is like working through that and being like, okay, so once we get past, I can do this. It's like, well, what do I create content around? What do I say? What do I write? What do I record? And a lot of times it's like, well, it's already been said before. And it's like, but it might have been said before, but your experiences, your point of view, your twist on things, that might be the one time that it actually resonates with who you're trying to reach. It's like if you go to a comedy show, two comedians could take the same script, like one could knock it out of the park. I could take that script and I would totally fall flat. I wouldn't resonate with the audience because I'm not a comedian. And so it's like people need you, and you're going to resonate with people, and your content's going to drive home points that might be similar in nature and concepts than other people, but because of you, they resonate. So we get past, okay, what do I say? What do I create? And then it's like, oh my gosh, the technology. Like, there's so many apps, there's all this equipment, and really it's like, you can start with your phone. And if like you're looking at, okay, what do I upgrade next? It's like, get comfortable with your phone. Well, first, get comfortable with the content. If you have bad content, none of the rest of the stuff matters. Then start thinking about, all right, what about the audio? Because if people are listening to something, whether that's video or a podcast, audio is a great next place to upgrade. From there, you could look at lighting. And then finally, start thinking about the camera. But none of that matters if you're not even creating content. So just start with the content. Okay, so now we overcome the fear, we overcome what are you going to say, then we have the equipment. Now it's like, all right, when am I going to find the time? And I don't know in your experience, but content does take quite a bit of time. And so time, it just comes down to what's your priority. Do you really want to do this or not? And if it's not a priority, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I can attest to that time factor. It does take time. I will say, I recall a couple of disagreements my wife and I had about the amount of time I was spending on content. No, part of it was my fault because we were on vacation in Italy and I was like, I'm just going to film this one thing or whatever. And she's like, Terrell, you're on vacation. I was like, no, it'll be fine. And then 5 videos later, I was like, okay, I'm done. And she's sitting there like, okay, are we going to do this the whole vacation? I was like, I probably shouldn't. So that one was probably on me. But yeah, it does take time.
Yeah. How do you balance like how much time you spend on it?
So I will say for me, it used to be a ton of time in the beginning. But now that I've kind of developed I guess you'd say my own style and gotten comfortable with my own style, it tends to be a lot faster. So just about everything that I do, I usually do it in one take, unless there is a very specific script that I have to like read or follow. I usually do it in one take. And one of the things that I realized, like, I could keep working on it to make it perfect, which was what was taking longer. So I'm just like, you know what? One take, I'm going to get this good enough.
Yeah.
And that has saved me from spending too much time.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that because I used to do the same thing, like retake. And I'm like, usually it's good enough. And it might not be exactly what you had in mind for it, but it's like your viewers, as long as you communicated the main point, they don't know what you had in mind, so you're wasting time. Like, they're not going to be like, wait, you thought you wanted it to look like this, or say it exactly like that. It's like, they don't know.
That's a really good point because I do feel like a lot of times, when we're editing, and this is a conversation I had with my friend Scott when he asked me to help him with some of the stuff for Accounting High, and I was like, dude, you are spending way too much time comparing the actual output to this vision that you had in your head. And I was like, we don't even know if that vision you had in your head is even possible to actually achieve that level of expertise in the amount of time that we have.
Yeah.
And so we really started going back, and even for myself, is going back, looking at it from the external perspective, like, are they going to get what they need from what I have? If they are, or if they can, it's good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm curious for you, as you kind of, navigate that and people hear those true statements, those things that you talked about of helping them get over those hurdles. Now, when it comes down to execution, Because a lot of people will hear that and say, Katie, you are absolutely right. Yeah, I should not be afraid. Yes, I have something to say. And yes, you know what, the technology is not that big of a deal. And yes, I'm not going to spend all day on it. I'm going to set aside some time. But then when it comes down to actually doing it, that accountability piece, have you found that a lot of people, you know, hear all that, but they still don't execute?
Yeah, of course. It happens a lot. And so then my role and my company's role, it's like, hey, if you want to make this happen, do you need support? So support could look like a variety of things. Maybe it's they need support in the fact that we interview them to help them come up with content topics through asking them questions. Maybe then they need that interview cut up into clips and edited and produced. Maybe though they can take that interview and they're like, okay, I can take now the clips and I can write the captions to go with the post. It just depends like where they need support and accountability, and so we can fill in. But ultimately, they still have a role in it. They have to show up at whatever level that looks like. And you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So if it is important to you, at some point it's like either raise your hand for help, or you don't want to be in the same spot a year from now. There's more and more content creators and more people, they need your help. So start creating content. There's no better time than today.
Awesome. I love it. Now, here's one of the other big reasons that I wanted to bring you onto the show is, you know, when it comes down to trying to develop a profitable business, one of the best ways to do it is to lower your cost of acquisition. And so I want to talk about what are some of the results that people usually see when it comes down to creating content, because some people may say, well, I'll create content, but I'm not making money directly from my first video, so why do it? So what are some of the results that you see people get when they are creating content?
I think the results are so much beyond what people initially start creating content to, say, attract clients. It's like you build something greater, whether it's you and me are having this conversation. They get invited on other podcasts, which that opens up so many opportunities. They maybe get invited to speak at events that are in their niche or who they're trying to serve. And so whenever you go into content, I think it's important to not be like, okay, I need to tie this ROI to, you know, this piece of content, or I need to get this ROI in 3 months. You need to open up your mind and think about, okay, if I create good quality content for a specific target market, the opportunities are going to come. And if I try to condense it down into just this time frame, you're probably going to really just sell yourself short on what's possible. It's when you think about people that you follow, and maybe it's someone that you bought something from, or maybe it's someone whose event that you attended, or someone you collaborated with, it's not because you just saw one post from them. It's like they were consistent, and that consistency does take time. And so this also goes back to like what you want to get out of your content. You have to think about where you're starting from, because if it's someone who's been, you know, somewhat active and they just want to take things to the next level and start producing more content, they're going to probably get traction a lot quicker than someone who's like, hey, I've never made one social media post in my life. Like, it's going to take some time.
Yeah. You know, that's something that I can attest to as well, is that when starting off, it took some time, because it's almost like, you know, there's so many different videos for people to see, and depending on like the type of business, like if you're an accountant, for sure, you got to develop some trust, and that's not going to happen on your first video. Like, no one's going to see it. Like, it's not like a pair of tennis shoes. They see it, oh, that looks cool, I'll go buy it. I mean, most people don't pick their accountant that way.
Right.
Or their bookkeeper that way.
Right.
I mean, it takes a little bit more. So I can definitely see that.
Yeah, and something I think with like accountants in particular, it's like you usually have one accountant. And so for accountants, it's not just like, hey, you can get a bunch of different sneakers and switch. But it's like, if you are looking for new clients, like you have to take them on a journey where it makes sense for them to pick you or switch to you. Like, that's a lot bigger ask and investment for that person.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So I'm curious for you, and all the content that you've created, has there been any pieces of your content that you have put out there where you were surprised about the impact or the reach that it got?
Yeah, there's been a couple, and it's the ones that I just kind of put out and didn't expect to do very well. And when I say do well, it's like, what do you define as well? So if we're just talking about like views or engagement or messages where people are like, hey, I really resonated with that. Those are often like the more personal posts about your life. Like I put one out last year where I was just honest. Hey, I literally had just had a baby, and then my friend was like, let's go to the pool. And it was just about like, hey, we all have insecurities, we all get uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, like, go have fun, just like live your life, do your thing. And that wasn't a post that it was just spur of the moment, and it wasn't a post that I was trying to like drive new business, but I ended up having a conversation with someone who was in my similar spot, and we hit it off, and now she's been a great client of mine, which I had no intent to, try to get clients from that post, but it was just showing like I'm a real person with real feelings.
Mm-hmm. I find that to be amazing on the marketing and the sales side of that people make buying decisions sometimes for something that is totally unrelated to like your product or your service.
Yeah.
It's just like you said, she had a baby, she could connect with, she felt like you understood what she was going through. So she trusted you enough to say, hey, you know what? We probably should do business together.
Right. It just opened up a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So I've noticed that. How about yourself?
No, it's been the same. I will say some of the videos that we've done, it's really just connected well with people. I would say one video that I did maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I did with a friend of mine. We had a conversation of accounting versus finance, where both of us are CPAs, but he was in controllership, I was in FP&A, and we talked about accounting versus finance. And I started it off with a couple of jokes of just comparing the two. I said, it's like, I was finance, he was accounting. I was like, it's like Mike Tyson versus that other guy who lost, or something like that. And people really liked the jokes, and they paid attention. There were actually a couple university professors that said they started using it in their classroom to help teach about, the difference between accounting and finance. And we were like, we didn't realize that was going to be the reach of that. So yeah, I will say it definitely opened up a lot of doors and a lot of connections.
That's awesome. What inspired you to start your content creation journey?
So for me, I would say the video side was more so of, I was answering some of the same questions. Like I was working for a, industrial manufacturing company, and I worked with a lot of engineers. And so I was answering some of the same questions, and I was like, I'm just going to create a video and just refer them back to the video so I don't have to keep answering the same question. And when I started doing that, like my manager saw some of the videos, which was a scary thing, because it's like, am I going to get fired for doing this?
Yeah.
But some of the other executives saw the videos and they really liked them. And so I was just like, well, it's helping people. I don't have to keep answering the same question. So I just continued doing it. And then when I started my firm, I was just like, hey, this is work to help me get reach. So I'm just going to continue it.
That's incredible. It's great that you did it despite being at a company, because that's something I see coming up a lot is, hey, I want to build my brand, but I'm not sure what my employer is going to think of me. Or on the flip side, the firm partners are like, we want to have our staff or our team create content, but we aren't sure on like how to best approach it.
Now, I guess, are there any typical pieces of advice that you give to companies who may reach out to you to say, hey, we want our staff to create content, but we're not sure how to approach it?
Yeah, so the first thing is to give them the training. Like as accountants, we like structure. We like to know that we can do a good job and be successful at what we're doing. So it's like just saying, hey, go create some content. I think a lot of times people who aren't in the content creation space, they think, especially for younger people, that we grew up on social media and so we just know how to do it. And it's like, there are processes and things that, can really make the content creation journey easier. So teach them, train them. Another thing can be to gamify it, so make it fun, and who doesn't love a good competition? Setting the tone at the top. It's like if you want your staff to create content, then you better be doing it as well. You can't ask someone to do something that you yourself, I firmly believe, aren't doing. So those are a few things that can really make a big difference. And then finally, just trust them. So I think sometimes, at least in my experience, I've seen where the partners are like, well, what if they're putting out things that kind of misalign with our values? It's like they can do that anyway. By you encouraging them to create content and create a brand, you're not encouraging them to post things that are factually incorrect. at the end of the day, they want to do things that are going to represent them well, and that's going to represent your firm well too.
Yeah. No, that is really good. Now, speaking of gamify, one post that I did like that stays in my mind, I did as a part of a project you were doing where we're trying to encourage people to, you know, just get in the habit of creating content. So it was a recent project that you did. So tell us a little bit about that and just how that came about.
The video challenge?
Yes.
Yes. So I was creating a lot of video content for the month of April, and I thought, you know what? Why not ask other accountants if they want to come along in this process and create video content? And, you know, sometimes it's hard to start something that's new, which creating videos is for a lot of accountants. And so I thought, you know what if we come together as a community, we hold each other accountable. If, you know, we need help and support along the way, we're all there. And yeah, so during the month of April, I encouraged a group of accountants. Terrell was awesome. He participated to create a video every single day. And from there, I got a lot of questions in my inbox from people who they maybe signed up for the video challenge that we did, but they didn't quite get over the hurdle to create their first video, or they just had lingering questions that held them back. So then I started Dear Katie, which is where people, they can submit a question, and every single week I'm answering a question that someone submitted. You can remain anonymous if you want to, and also doing some live shows around it, some emails and blogs around it, just to make sure that everyone gets not just their question answered, but a lot of times, kind of going back to your point, it's like if someone has a question, likely other people do too. So just bringing more awareness and support to the community as a whole.
Awesome. So what's the cadence and the schedule for when that Ask Katie comes out?
So every single week there's a newsletter on Saturday answering a question, and then every single Thursday there's a live that answers a question as well. And then people can submit their question at any time. It's just dearkatie.leaders-online.com, and I'm sorting through the questions constantly to pick the most common ones or the ones that I hear being asked myself the most common as well.
Gotcha. I will say that challenge that you did, it was a great challenge even for me, like even in creating content, because one of the things that I think it was a question you asked about, like, what type of content are you going to be creating? And I was like, you know what if I just like stretch myself a little bit? And I said, like, I picked a Google trend. I went to Google Trends and said, I'm going to pick something and relate it to business. And I was just like, it was a little bit of a challenge to be able to connect the dots, but it was really fun, though.
It was so creative what you did. I've never seen anyone do that, and I thought that it allowed people to really like understand and drive home. Like if you took that same point and you didn't attach it to a trend, I don't think it would have been as effective. Mm-hmm. It like made it very tangible and real. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say the one that I had the most fun with was the Mario Brothers one.
Oh yeah, I remember that. It totally stands out.
Because when I was looking at it, I was just like, man, that is right. Like, you have a little Italian plumber has built a $35 billion empire. I'm just like, there got to be some business lessons there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Now, I guess for yourself in creating content, you know, have you gotten to the point where it is a fun process, or do you feel like, hey, I have to do this for the company, or I have to do this to really get the brand out there?
So I think if you do something long enough and you know that you have to do it, there is a piece that's like, okay, I'm obligated to do this. I'm obligated to show up. But for me, when it comes to content, it's like if something is no longer fun, then I'm not going to continue doing it. For example, there was a time when I was producing like edited YouTube videos that were longer. And I did that for a while, and for me, it just wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. And so I could have kept pushing, but it's like, you know what? I love creating short form. I'm liking doing these live that are a little bit longer, Dear Katie's. Like, I enjoy that, and so I'm going to lean into that. And I think that should be something that any content creator can walk away with. Is like, if you don't enjoy creating this specific type of content, there's a lot of other content you can create. You can probably find something that you want to do. However, keeping it real, if you are creating content and you are sticking to a schedule, you might not feel like doing it every single day, but that's different from just like hating it as a whole. Mm-hmm. So I think balancing those two is important.
Gotcha. Now, you brought up an interesting point, like that, from the long form versus the short form. Now, do you have a preference over either one, or does it depend on like strategy, what they're trying to communicate, or who they're trying to reach?
Are you talking about for like an individual or for myself?
I would say, let's start with for yourself, and then we'll talk about an individual.
Yeah, so I think for myself, I love LinkedIn, and so short form content does really well in there. I enjoy creating it, and so it works well. For an individual, a lot of times I find that it really depends upon them and what their interests are and how they want to produce content. So, for example, someone might find it easier to get on a podcast and talk about a subject in depth, and then we can take that podcast and cut it up into a lot of various clips. Whereas the other person might say like, hey, you know what, if you work with me to help me come up with 20 ideas, I can knock out those 1-minute clips, and it's really easy for me. So it kind of depends upon like their style, what they feel like, works with their personality, as well as the platform, because of course the platform matters. YouTube, long form, there are YouTube shorts, but traditionally we've seen long form, do really well on YouTube, whereas like LinkedIn, short form, TikTok, short form. Mm-hmm. So kind of balancing the platform and the person.
Gotcha. Awesome. So I want to talk about, your production process. So like, do you edit everything and do all post-production yourself?
No. Oh my gosh. My job is to record the video and then send it off. I used to edit everything, and the editing process is so time consuming.
So I would say for all of the editors out there, our hearts go out to you.
Yes, yes.
I think with gratitude, because the editing process is a pretty interesting one, because I was the same. Like, I used to edit everything, and then my wife became my editor, and then I started seeing the frustration build. So I'm like, all right, we got to find somebody else to do that.
Yeah. If I want my marriage to last, we got to stop this.
So I hired a VA that was solely dedicated to her on the editing side, and we also went back and we adjusted some processes. Like, one of the things that I recommend to a lot of people like that want to create like highlight clips if you're doing a podcast, what I always do, and I would say this is the secret that we do, is we will have the entire conversation. At the very end, I will ask the person, hey, what are your 2 big takeaways from this conversation? And that becomes a clip every time. And that tends to shorten like the editing process a ton, because now the person doesn't have to go search through the entire interview to find a good clip.
Yeah.
And so I think now for yourself, have you found little things that you do or change in your recording process that help the editing become a lot more efficient?
So, kind of similar to what you shared, I find if you write the caption or the post that's going to go along with the video first, and let that serve as kind of your roadmap for what you want to talk about in your video, as well as to give to the editor so that they know ahead of time like what this is about, that helps a lot, rather than just keeping that idea of the content in your head and then you create the video and now they have to edit it without knowing what it's going to be about. Plus now you've got to go back, or a writer has to go back and create that caption. I found that to be huge.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I do want to ask, we're at the AICPA Engage, what's been some of your key takeaways from the conference?
One, accountants are awesome. So I think that there's still the thought floating around that accountants are boring, and that's just definitely not the case. Come to a conference like this. I mean, ask Terrell how late he was out last night. So, one, accountants are awesome, they're fun. And then 2 is the power of your community. It's just something that really surprised me about the accounting industry as a whole is the community and the people and the friendships that you can make, that people are so willing to help you out, from hey, here's how you start a podcast and make it more efficient, to here's some things to think about if you're looking for new practice management software, and here's how we do things at my firm. I just find it to be such an inclusive, helpful community that I don't think other industries have this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do think it's a unique thing to see it in the accounting industry, and just you know, just the camaraderie that you see when you come to the conference of people that, you know, because I would say, like, the AICPA Engage was like one of the first conferences I went to last year for the first time. And just from there, meeting people was just immediately welcomed in. I will say, like, there's several people. I went to a pool party, met several people there to where now that, like, that's our annual ritual. Like, we'll meet at the pool party.
Yeah.
Just to connect, and now it's extended into other parties, which we got to get you to come out, like, to some of the later night parties.
Oh man, I'm at the day parties. That's where I'm at.
We're going to have to, like, extend your bedtime.
Perfect.
Awesome. Now, I guess, you know, I'm curious for you, is like, are you married to an accountant or?
Oh, me?
Yes.
I'm not married to an accountant.
Okay.
I'm married to an engineer he's head of product for accounting software.
Got it. So,
yeah.
Like, what is his feedback? Because, I mean, you know, when he comes to events like this, I mean, because, like, his company is here. So what is his feedback from what he observes of how you interact with other accountants and what happens in the industry?
So he worked in industry for a while on the engineering side of things, and he's noticed a lot of what I was saying with the community and like how accountants, they really are just like a tight-knit community. And he's like, I wish that we had that whenever I was in the engineering industry, but he said he loves it so much in the accounting industry, he said he's never going back. It's like, I'm all in on the accounting industry.
Awesome. I love it. And, you know, and to that, I say, there's so many accountants that I meet that we don't do, like my firm, we focus on law firms. And so as I'm meeting different business owners, I'm just like, hey, I know a great accountant you should connect with, or I know a great firm you should connect with. And I think, like, I don't see that happening in many other industries. Do you?
No, that's the thing. Running a marketing agency, I find that other marketers a lot of times, and this is not to diss all marketers, not everyone's like this, but it's like, oh, don't go talk to them, or, you know, don't share strategies, which honestly, I don't think anything's a secret anymore. Google pretty much prevented secrets, and now we have ChatGPT, so it's even nothing at all is a secret. But it's accountants, we're willing to sit down and be like, here's how I do stuff. I'm a firm owner, and I will tell another firm owner exactly the same, just because we don't view it like that. It's collaboration over competition.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I want to say thank you for coming on. But before we wrap up, I do want to ask, you know, we've had a great conversation. So what are your 2 big takeaways from this conversation?
My 2 big takeaways are absolutely everyone should be creating content and building a brand. It's not just for new clients. It's not just if you're a firm owner. It's way beyond that. And I think that if you have not yet started, it's the perfect time to start. Just follow Terrell, watch what he's doing. And then my second biggest takeaway is that, you really put me on the spot here. My second biggest takeaway.
That just means there's so many good things that you said that it's hard to pick one.
I'm going to have to go with is that it just doesn't have to be complicated. You can always find a system and a process to make sure that you are able to continue moving forward. So like we talked about, you don't need to worry about the tech or the lighting or the camera. It's not some abstract thing, which I think a lot of people do think marketing is abstract. There can be a process to it. So if you love processes, you love systems, there is one when it comes to creating content and doing marketing. So if you need help, you can reach out to myself. You can go to Google, ChatGPT, get yourself a process, follow it, and get started, and you can just improve over time.
Awesome. So where can people find you? What's the best way for them to look for you, get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch is I'm Katie Thomas, CPA, on all social media platforms. LinkedIn's my favorite one, so you can definitely find me there, or go to leaders-online.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you everyone for listening, and thank you everyone for watching. This is the Stuff Your Accountant Isn't Telling You from the Earmark Studio in the Quick Fee booth. Thanks for tuning in.
Hey, it's your girl Tia Robertson. I'm the host of Entrepreneur Insider. Right here on RETV every Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern for entrepreneurs and news that you need to know about. See you there.
Welcome to What's Going On? My name is Demita Joe. Each Wednesday, you can find me here at 3 p.m. I'll be over here discussing different things that are going on and try to bring you a boost of positivity for your week because we all need this. We're going to share some feel-good stories. We might find a hometown hero. We may take a look at some trending topic. And sometimes we might even find a lesson in a not-so-warm and fuzzy story if we can. I'm Demita Joe, and I'll see you guys on the next episode right here on What's Going On?